What up, gang? It's your boy ZaZa back with another banger. Hey, today we on a reaction video, right? We reacting to Mr. Grow It. The homie called me, said he dropped a video, and I gotta see it. So this is my first time checking it out. It's a raw, uncut reaction, and you know how those go. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Get it!
Like, comment, share, subscribe, you heard me?
Yeah, you know it.
Turn up the leaf blower and the lawnmower. Harry, he smoked the sour. Should've been a hippie, should've been a shower. Bread with no dread, black cock, who ya?
Another thing, don't forget to join the Discord.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Got a juicy one for you today. Breeders aren't on the same page these days, and it's hurting the grower. What do I mean by that? Well, I've spoken to a number of breeders over the years, and they all seem to do things a little bit differently. Now, one thing that has sparked a little bit of controversy recently was ZaZa Genetics. Now, I'm not trying to single him out, but he does have a way of doing things that's a little bit different than other breeders.
All right, so off top, so I just do things by the way of science. So it's definitely different because they do it the way they do it, but I do it by what we know as the book, by science. And when we refer to these scholarly articles, any information you get from me on my videos, in person, online, whatever, I always urge you to build on that information, right? I always urge you to, and I'm hoping that when you going to build on that information, that you also verifying that information to be correct, right? And that's why we encourage everybody to go out and always build with these scholarly articles. But let's continue on.
And I just want to talk about that today and spread some awareness to the growers, because unfortunately it causes confusion in the community when some people are doing it some way, some people are doing it another way, then there's another way things are being done. And then there's arguments about which way is the right way to go about it. So I figure I'd throw it all out here in this video, and I want to get your...
When it comes to science, you can't, I mean, you can form your own hypothesis, your own theories or whatever, but you can't really argue factuated science, man. You know, so ultimately it's all documented science that whatever comes out of my mouth. So comes from books, it comes from history, it comes from just factual knowledge. Same things we learned in the 7th grade, elementary school. It's elementary, dear Watson. So ultimately we just go back and refresh our minds and our memories, and then we build on it with scholarly articles that are pulled mostly from colleges and universities, right? Those are the articles we use to build on that information. And when it comes to 20 years hands-on experience, man, listen, there's really no competition. You know, I'm in competition with myself always. You know, it's 20 years hands-on experience. I could say light years, but I just want to keep this video all factual. Let's carry on.
Input as well. So at the end of this video, I want to hear your thoughts about what way do you think breeders should go about it. So I think one of the bigger disagreements amongst breeders is the testing of the genetics before the release. I had ZaZa Genetics on my podcast. I actually have an episode coming up in a couple weeks here. I sat down with him. It was actually the second time I sat down with him and fired off a bunch of questions. And one of the things he mentioned in there, we talked about testing, and I was asking about what the proper way to test genetics before releasing to the public. And one of the things he had mentioned is that he does all in-house testing. He does all the testing himself. He wants to be sure that what he releases to anybody else besides him is solid. It's not going to harm on them. He wants to get to the point where he's comfortable and then release.
That's a fact. And that's for a reason, because when you have 20 years hands-on experience, it comes with also a trained eye. You understand? So if I'm selecting a population for whether undesirable or desirable traits, I can't rely on an inexperienced eye or just a random grower to be able to select on the ability that I need them to. I have to rely on my own 20 years of experience and my own trained eye, because that's all that makes sense. You know, if I'm able to build up another breeder and help him to train his eye with his own hands-on experience, then yeah, we can create that network, right? But until that's we just not ready for that yet. We have to constantly educate with good science, and that's just my preference. You understand what I'm saying? That's no science or here. That's just my preference. I don't, and that's why, because of my trained eye. We'll carry on.
To the public because he doesn't want to have any bad experiences happening, such as the plant flipping, herming, showing nanners, for example, at some point throughout the flowering stage. Now, that statement alone caused another breeder, Chaz Westport, to speak up and talk about his perception of really the importance of having a team of testers. So Chad was saying, not just test yourself, but also send out to a team of testers around the world. He had mentioned he sends testers out to a whole bunch of different people in different areas, some indoor growers, some outdoor growers. And he likes to send to new growers because they often make mistakes and they tend to stress out plants more than experienced growers. So Chad likes to get input from all of those people and then make the determination whether or not he's going to release it.
And that's cool. That's his preference. That's his way of doing things, and that doesn't make my way of doing things incorrect. My way of doing things is based on my experiences. So his experience is how he uses his experience to determine how he does things is on him. So and shout out to him. I've never had a conversation with him. I've never I've heard only I've seen him post a comment on the shout out to him. We can always have a conversation. I'm always in my Discord, available to talk. And for me, it's always about encouraging and fostering an attitude of exactly that. Us wanting to do better for the community. For me, that's what it's about. So I'm always willing to come together and for breeders, experience, upcoming breeders, so-called whatever you want to put title you want to put on yourself is fine. For me, the only thing that matters is the education. That's all that matters. There's no competition, because this is education. I'm here as a duty, and and if I have allies, I'm willing to work with you so that we can better this community together. It's never a contest or anything like that. So, I'm always open.
Genetics. At least that's what I grasped from what he was saying in another video. Shout out to Pigeons420. He actually released a video on this. I'll link his video down in the description section below. He goes into both of their opinions in one video, and I thought that was a pretty juicy video as well. But that's just one example of how breeders just simply aren't on the same page when it comes to testing. Now, there are other things people aren't on the same page with, breeders aren't on the same page with, which is when it is acceptable and not acceptable for plants to herm. Now, there are two types of herms. There are herms where the plant is in flowering, and within the first roughly 2-3 weeks of flowering, there will be pollen sacs at the nodes. Now, from what I learned, this is genetic. It's not stress-induced. So this is going to be within the genetics. It happens. Apparently, there is a way to make it more recessive trait, so it shows less often. That just comes down to not selecting those and using those for future breeding projects. But there's also hermaphrodite plants that show intersex traits via nanners, and that is said to be stress-induced. And that'll typically show within the first several weeks of flowering, right? So the plant starts to flower. I've had nanners show as early as week 3, 4, 5. Very common. That is a big, a big blow to the grower because, well, you got to kill the plant at that point. Now, some people will take and pluck nanners off of the plant and try to get the plant to continue on for weeks and weeks and weeks until harvest, so they actually get a harvest. Others are just going to kill off the plant at that point. So having nanners show within the beginning of flower in those first several weeks of flowering is detrimental. Now, what are the things that can actually cause the plant to be so stressed out that it causes nanners? Well, there are several different things. One of the things is heat. Too high of heat, and the plant could be so stressed out that it causes nanner. Too high of light stress, that causes nanner. I had a blueberry by MSNL years ago, and I had it too close to the light. I had this one branch that just came up, was flopping off towards the side, and it was only about 10 inches from my grow light. I thought I was going to be okay. all of a sudden a couple of days later, and that whole branch was just loaded with nanners due to light stress. I took that upon me because I messed up. I felt like I had the light too close, a grower error. That's what I personally deemed it as. And I think a lot of growers will take responsibility if they are running plants, growing plants outside of the normal parameters. So too high of heat. How much is too high of heat? It's a little bit subjective, right? Are we talking over 90 degrees Fahrenheit? Are we talking over 100 degrees Fahrenheit? At what point should we test to ensure that nanners aren't going to show before actually selecting that plant to be used on a breeding project? I think that's up for debate. I think there's a lot of disagreements with breeders amongst that. And just in general, showing nanners when there is too high of heat, there's some disagreements on if that's a grower error or a breeder error. ZaZa Genetics, for example, he had mentioned that's a breeder error. You should be breeding that characteristic out. The plant should be able to take so much light and not produce nanners. Other breeders are going to say, oh no, they ran it too high of heat. It caused nanners. That's a grower's fault. And so unfortunately, this information is being passed down to the growers and there's confusion going on. I actually had a grower hit me up.
Look, this is what I'm saying. If you confused, go do the research. Check the facts. Like, ultimately, weakness is weakness. It can be bred out. It's an undesirable trait. Undesirable traits can be bred out. Whether recessive or dominant, they can be bred out. And, it's ways to do it. There's different tools in my toolbox. You don't understand the transgression back cross where I could use a recurrent in a donor parent, so and push out as much as the donor parent genes that I want while only maintaining the one gene that I'm looking to fix within my elite line. But that's another topic for a more advanced lesson, but that's just a tool in my toolbox that I can get that done. I can go and acquire and fix one trait while getting rid of all the rest of the unwanted or undesirable traits by using an advanced tool in my toolbox. You have to build your toolbox up. If you're an advanced breeder, you claim to be, don't just talk. Just if you're going to talk, have something to say, but know what you're talking about.
Up recently, and he had mentioned the Chillot OG is showing nanners. And when I heard that, my heart dropped. I was like, what the heck? I selectively, I stress these plants, heat stress, light stress, and select it down to the F3. Why is it showing nanners? It doesn't make sense. Nobody else.
Now you got to understand too, it takes generations and generations, which is equivalent to years when we're talking about isolating a particular undesirable trait and removing it. Like it's not just something you can go to F3 and then it's done. You got to really keep going. You got to really keep going until you are 100% sure that that recessive trait has been avoided throughout several generations of inbreeding. This is the epitome of an inbred line. That's why it's always important to know the two parents that you're starting with. The foundation is the most important, because off the jump, if you start with the wrong parents, you can be at a disadvantage. You can be at if you start with two good parents and choose by lineage and know the particular breeder and the genetics, and like I said it again. You could buy, if I wanted a German Shepherd, I could just go buy a German Shepherd, yeah. But that's not gonna be an ideal situation when I know there's actual reputable breeders who take pride and own themselves in actually breeding champion line German Shepherds. So I'm gonna do my research, and I'm gonna end up getting a German Shepherd from one of those breeders. And that's the foundation you want. So if I was to just go get a German Shepherd from a backyard breeder, right? Just back there throwing it together, and then imagine I wanted to start my own line of shepherds, and I started with this. No, that's too. I'm already putting years and years adding it to my work. adding it, because now I have to remove undesirable traits. That's the first and foremost priority. Off the rip, I have to get it stable to where it's neutral. Neutral meaning like no undesirables. But then we do the work after that of stabilizing individual desirable traits and forming it how we want, right? But ultimately the goal is to start with two parents that are for sure not possessing any undesirable traits. And with that, you're off to a good start.
Else was reporting this. Well, come to find out, the grower actually went beyond the harvest window and nanners were shown. And that's what I think that I thought a lot of people knew about. But if plants are grown past the harvest time, there is a high chance of nanners showing, just because the plant, it wants to reproduce, right? It wants to continue on. It wants to self-pollinate, create seeds, and obviously have those seeds drop to the ground, and then more plants grow. That's a part of nature. So yeah, if you're running plants past the harvest window, it can certainly show nanners. And do we blame that on the breeder, or do we blame that on the grower? I think that's another thing a lot of people argue about, because we hear about nanners should never show by any circumstances. Nanners should never show. Unfortunately, they're hearing that. They're pushing plants past the harvest window, seeing nanners, and then they're going back to the breeder.
All right, so and yeah, let's give a good explanation of when a female, and we always hear the term last ditch effort. When a female is making a last ditch effort to preserve her own genetics, right? That will trigger in most females, not all, right? Because ultimately it's all about the reaction, right? So even if it may trigger in all females, the reaction won't be the same, right? So even if me and 6, 7 of my brothers and sisters, right? If I had 6 or 7 brothers and sisters, we all live in the same house and we all caught the flu. Although we all are from the same gene pool and we have the same virus, same flu, right? We all gonna react differently to it. It's gonna affect us differently. So it's the same within. It's the same. Genetics are very universal, and it's the same when it comes to plants, right? So ultimately, you want to choose and select the most vigorous and healthy and strongest plants, because they won't exhibit nanners when that reaction is triggered. When they are at that point, they're so vigorous, healthy, athletic. This is why I always stress those are the traits you want to breed for, because those are the traits that'll prevent you from ever having hermaphrodites and undesirable traits.
And saying, hey, your plant's showing nanners. But yeah, if you're within that harvest window and you're seeing nanners, then a plant should be harvested at that point. I've had so many genetics over the years where it was ready for harvest. And I was like, I'll give it another day. I wanted to bulk up a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, like a day or two later, it has nanners on it. Now, am I going to go back to the breeder and say, hey, your plant showed nanners, and expect them to take responsibility? I'm personally not. I personally am going to just say, hey, I should have harvested a day before. But there are growers out there who are going to go to the breeder and say, hey, your plant's showing nanners. You have bad genetics, blah, blah, blah. So again, this kind of stems back to breeders not being on the same page.
All right, yeah. So let's clear that up, right? That's not the breeder's, fault, because ideally we want to harvest our plants within the ideal harvest time, right? Ultimately, it will take conditioning over some years of selecting with a certain level of experience. Selecting is not as easy as it sounds. You got to get that hands-on experience, and you got to build your eye up. And as you continuously build and go in different directions and try different things with the tools in your toolbox, you start to gain that experience. It doesn't make you a bad breeder if your joint herms. after harvest time. Come on, man. Be fair about it.
Page with things. And unfortunately, it's trickling down to the grower, and there's confusion. And it's not really just a breeding topic that there's confusion, right? There's confusion within lighting. There's confusion within soil biology. There's lots of disagreements that happen, but it seems recently there's just been a lot of people who have just been confused on the breeding side of things when it comes to when you should test, how long you should test, when nano should show.
Hey, I'm glad we inspired some conversation, though. Listen, ultimately, if you're a bad breeder or you've built your brand and your reputation and you've made a lot of money on bad breeding practices and pollen chucking and lack of education, then I get it. You know, I understand. But if you're a breeder who may not have known so much along the way, but you feel like you want to build and you want to do it the right way, then that's what I applaud at the end of the day. And either way, regardless, whichever one you are, we sparked the conversation, right? Because when I came into this community, wasn't nobody even talking about, nobody knew what heterozygosity was, and we upped the level, you know, to the point where people started wanting to challenge the sensei. Hey, listen, I'm still Mr. Miyagi, you know, but I'm willing to work with all my Daniel sons, no doubt. But just know, I'm going to always be Mr. Miyagi. And I may get a little gray in the beard, you know, but it's that moment you think you can hop in the ring with Mr. Miyagi that, oh, you know you done, right? Hey, man, listen, let's work together. I'm telling you. Hey, because that ain't what you want. Yeah? Carry on.
If it's the breeder's fault, if it's the grower's fault, there's a lot of questions at this point, and it seems like there's not really a clear-cut answer on these things. So I want to make this video to spread some awareness, to let you guys know that there are people who are just not on the same page about different things. So your beliefs may be different from theirs. The fact of the matter is, science hasn't evolved enough to really show everything we need to know about this plant. We are continuing to learn new things almost every single day. And that's one thing that makes it fun for me, is it's an endless amount of things that we can learn. Again, this isn't bashing any breeder at all. I know I named ZaZa and I named Chad Westport. Both those guys I respect highly. I gain information from both of them. ZaZa's been on my podcast a couple times. Chad's been on my podcast a couple times. I welcome them on my podcast again in the future because they really have a lot of great insight. But not all breeders are on the same page, and unfortunately it's causing confusion for the grower. So I'd love to hear your opinion on what you think about these things. Testing. How do you think testing should be done? Should it just be internal by one person? Should it be spread out to multiple people? Hermaphrodite plants. Is it the grower's error or the breeder's error if the plant is run too high in nano show? Temperature is what I'm referring to, or too high of light. If the plant is exposed to too high of light in nano show, is that the grower error or the breeder error? I'd love to know your opinion down in the comment section below. I'm going to link Pigeon's 420 video down in the description section below. Click on that, tune into that. That's a good watch. It shows both ZaZa's perception and Chad Westport's perception. And leave a comment on his video and let him know that I sent you. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, peace.
Shout out to my brother, man, Chris, Mr. Grow It. Much love, bro. He hit me. He was like, man, listen, just want to let you know. And that's much respect, man. I appreciate you for doing that. But I already know it was going to be a good video. It was a banger. It was a good video. And just, I'm inspired just to know that we sparked the conversation. Shout out to Chad Westport, man. I never had a conversation with you, but once again, we can always talk, man. We can always figure out ways to collaborate and build because ultimately it's about QCE, quality, community, and education. We bring quality to this community through education. So let's link, brother. All right, gang. So that was it, man. Much love to Mr. Grow, much love to CLTV, much love to AC Infinity. Make sure you hit that code Team ZaZa at checkout for AC Infinity. Make sure you hit ZaZagenetics.com. It's a big sale going on. No package sale. I'm thinking about redesigning my packaging. So right now you're just getting generic packaging. So stuff is up to 60% off. Go grab it before I figure it all out. And then remember one thing. I'm not I don't create canned content. I'm not, a plant breeder. I'm a breeder, and I teach reproduction. So it is no competition. Listen, you can just go back and check my videos. Whatever you're trying to talk about now, I talked about already. As 101 basics. On me. Let's work together, you know? Much love, gang, man. I'm out of here.